He's in the chair. The chair's in the chair.
Oh.
All right, thank you, committee. We are back live. House Committee of Government Operations and Military Affairs. And we are now taking up presentations of floor amendments for H429, Act relating to miscellaneous elections laws. And first up, we have Representative McCarthy, the chair of the committee, is presenting amendment sponsored by he and others.
Thanks very much, committee. It's interesting to be on this end of the table. You'll see on our page draft 1.7 of an amendment to H429 sponsored by me, our esteemed vice chair, Representative Krasnow of South Burlington, and Representative Small of Winooski, that represents a response to feedback that we've heard from folks outside the committee about our committee's work on miscellaneous elections policy. This amendment does two things. The first change is that it makes a pretty significant change to Section 3 to clarify. Recall that the problem we were trying to solve was that especially statewide candidates where, there's more money being spent potentially on staff or software licenses, are forced by the $10,000 cap from a single source contribution to a party that's in current law to kind of do an end run. This amendment, rather than just lifting that cap for all candidates, clarifies that we are only talking about state candidates being able to contribute more money. So a state candidate are those candidates for statewide offices. That's what that means. So their governor, lieutenant governor, auditor, attorney general, who am I missing, secretary of state and treasurer, that those candidates for state office are able to contribute not more than $60,000 to a party. So $60,000 statewide candidates only. That's the change for Section 3.
Okay.
Any questions about that?
Representative Hango?
I know you just said it, but the current limit is?
The current limit for a contribution from any source to a party is $10,000.
Cumulative or?
In an election cycle. But yes, cumulative. And so if you're a candidate for statewide office, a candidate for lieutenant governor, and you want to purchase software services, access to a database, and the fee that the party has for statewide offices for that is $12,000, you essentially have to raise money into the party and do an end run around the system to do that. It creates a kind of a complete lack of transparency. So folks are following the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law, they have to break if they do those coordinated activities according to what we heard from the executive director of two of the parties.
So with these three broken out, it could be a total of $80,000, but only 10 from a single source.
No, these are limits, hard limits on each of those entities. So for instance, a political party could take up to $10,000 from let's say one of us that's running for the House. That's the Romanet I. The party could take only up to $10,000 cumulatively over a cycle from a political committee. And parties in current statute can already take up to $60,000 from another political party. Recall that political party in this part of the statute means a county committee, state committee of the same party even. So political party can mean a lot of things. So in current statute, it's 60,000. That's kind of why we did the 60,000 from campaign.
That's what I was asking when I wanted to know what current law said. So,
so the $60,000, to be clear, in current law is a party limit contributing to another political party. This aligns that limit with what a statewide candidate's campaign could contribute to a party.
thanks.
Thank you for that clarification. I was going to ask that. Shay? Or sorry, Rep. Waters.
Thanks. We're good. Just to clarify, so 5A 1 and 2 is basically keeping things exactly the same as they were, and the only change in theory is
All of the Romanettes are in current law.
okay.
Representative
Am I
Hagan?
wrong in stating that other than the statewide candidates, so for us, let's say, a candidate is an unlimited amount to the party? Is that current?
So federal candidates,
No, so local Senate, House members.
we're considered a single source. So the most that we as state house campaigns could give to a party is 10,000.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
Any other questions? No, all right. Next.
The Second Amendment strikes out Section 5 of the bill that we passed. That you'll recall is the order of nominations. We heard significant feedback from our colleagues that that particular piece that we had worked on was something that they wanted us to reconsider. I've thought about the values that we espouse at the beginning of this, where we're trying to provide more integrity of the party nomination process and clarity to voters. I think this particular issue is one where it comes down to, is it more significant to win the party primary when you're the candidate choosing to run in that party by getting your petitions and filing, or by getting a certain number of write-in votes, or by being the party committee's nominee to fill a vacancy? I think that this is one of those things that there are valid arguments on both sides. But here, in order to address some of those concerns, I am supportive of striking that piece and saying that the other components of the bill, I think, provide us the integrity and the clarity that we were looking for voters. And so this piece would allow the candidate to continue as they do today. If they receive multiple nominations, for instance, if you ran as a Republican and also received the write-in votes or the nomination to get the Democratic nomination, you would have the choice as the candidate to elect to be an R/D or a D/R. So that's what this change would do by striking out our order of nominations section in Section 5.
Questions or clarification from anyone? Representative Boyd?
So then we're just keeping things where they are now.
Exactly. And Mr. Vice Chair, I think since the other amendment presenter is here, what we might do is take the votes. Well, actually, I think does the committee want to, how do you want to do this? Should we
vote on this first?
Yeah.
I have a question about that process. So if we were to vote on this amendment now before the other amendment is presented, is it like on the floor where then this becomes part of the bill and then the next amendment is we're voting on that amendment as to this bill as amended, that we just amended it?
We're giving our opinion on floor amendments that
Okay, so two different scenarios not affecting the original bill.
Correct.
So, yeah, my inclination would be to hear the presentation of the amendment and then consider the amendments because they could have impact on each other.
Well, that's kind of what I was wondering.
Yeah.
No, I can agree with that.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'd like to invite Representative Sibilia to present her amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I sent my testimony, and I see that that's been posted along with my amendment. I sent another document. I have not seen that up yet, so if I might just pass that around to committee members.
The poll?
This?
I see a Gallup poll
Yes. This?
posted.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Let me grab my amendment. And my testimony. Good morning. And my name is Representative Laura Sibilia, an independent representative for the new in 2022 reapportioned Wyndham 2 district and the towns of Dover, Jamaica, Somerset, Stratton, and Wardsboro. Mr. Chair and members of the committee, thank you for the time to hear about my amendment to your committee's miscellaneous elections bill 429. Let me start by acknowledging the work that you all have done to further accommodate disabled military and overseas early voters in Section 10 of your bill by proposing a means of electronic signing of the signing certificate required of early voters, and in Section 11 of your bill, proposing a means and process for counting the electronic ballots of those disabled military and overseas early voters. I am a mom of an Army nurse who votes in every election since her commissioning, never in Vermont. And on more than one occasion, our town clerk's office has reassured her via email on election day that her mailed-in ballot had finally arrived and would be counted. And so I thank you very much for those proposals. This morning, I'd like to offer 2 instances of amendment to your bill for the committee to consider. In the first instance, I am proposing to eliminate the so-called sore loser law. I'll remind the committee of the testimony they heard from former independent legislator Barbara Murphy last week, who noted these provisions limit voter choices, and who also reminded the committee of an important and often overlooked aspect of our elections, that the primary elections are for the parties to choose their candidate, and the general election is for the people to choose their candidate. Section 1 of your bill, you've proposed a change to existing law, and that describes how a candidate is nominated to appear on the general election ballot. As you know, in existing law, candidates can appear on the general election ballot by winning a party primary election, by nomination of a party, or by running as an independent. The section of existing law that tells us when and how parties may nominate, as opposed to a primary election, candidates to appear on the general election ballot talks about in cases of a vacancy on the general election ballot because of death or removal or withdrawal of a candidate or the failure of a major political party to nominate a candidate by primary election, and that minor political parties who wish to nominate a candidate for any office for which major political parties nominate candidates by primary or for the offices of president and vice president. This section of law also tells us that only major and minor parties may nominate candidates in this way. The committee proposes to amend this section of law to ban a candidate who loses a major party primary from being nominated to appear on the general election ballot, pursuant to this subchapter, by a committee of any party other than the party for which the candidate appeared on the primary ballot. Primary polarization, primaries are pretty polarized, and we see that our most ideological voters turn out in the primaries. Losing a primary means that you are unable to secure a party nomination by vote of its most ideological voters. Does this mean that you should be excluded from the people's general election choices? Given that nearly 50% of American voters consider themselves to be independent, I would argue no. And I would argue that while it's appropriate and helpful for parties to cultivate candidates to be their standard bearers, it is inappropriate for the parties to try and limit voters' choices after they have selected their candidates in the primary elections. The committee has then proposed to limit the means for an independent to appear on the general election ballot by banning a candidate who loses a major party primary for any office and requires that they shall not appear on the general election ballot as an independent candidate for the same office for which the candidate lost in the primary election. What if this candidate would be the top choice of general election voters? How will we know if they are not on the general election ballot? In addition, candidates that decline the primary nomination that they won automatically provide an opportunity for the party to nominate another candidate. The committee proposals do not increase voter choice, do not trust the voters to make their own choices, and attempt to give parties power to limit candidates past their party's primary. I would ask the committees to strike these sections in its floor amendment. In addition to leaving, so that's sections 1 and 2, and that is the first instance of amendment in my amendment. In addition to leaving the process for running independent after losing a party primary or declining the party nomination, I would ask that we move the date for independents seeking to file for the general election to the second Friday after the primary election. This is to provide all candidates equitable ballot access after the primary election, not just candidates that sought or received a party nomination. The primary is for the parties, the general election is for the people, and the party must not act as gatekeepers to the general election ballot for those who choose not to run with their nomination. So I would ask you to strike sections 1 and 2, leaving law as it is. And in addition, I would ask you to move the independent candidate filing deadline to the second Friday after the primary elections to ensure that, in fact, if the people see that the parties have not nominated candidates that are suitable or acceptable, they have the opportunity to have an independent file as well. Mr. Chair, thank you. I appreciate, and I've thanked you before. I know that you have done a lot of work and put a lot of miles and negotiation on this bill, and I want to acknowledge that effort. And that is it. That is my amendment.
Questions for Representative Sabili? Representative Hanko.
This is just a basic question because we've heard so many different scenarios that this bill could take, and it's not necessarily for Representative Sibilia, but what is the current in-law filing deadline for an independent, or is there?
Question.
It's just before, I think it's the Thursday before the primary, the major party primaries. So candidates can file as an independent, and because in H 429, we struck the idea of synchronizing the independent filing deadline. We originally had that in past iterations, excuse me. Mm-hmm. So we didn't touch that filing deadline. So
it remains the Thursday.
It remains, yeah, just before the major party primaries.
Thank you.
Representative Murwicki.
Just wanted to, I noted your take on primary voters. Mm-hmm. And I can share that in my primary, we had over 40% participation. I don't think those are just the polarized voters I don't know what the statewide totals were. I think Vermont does pretty well. And I think in other states, maybe that would be, and maybe there's another way to look at it. Other states are doing open primaries. 35. But I hear what you're saying, and there's a lot of different ways to see it.
I would note that there's a lot of data on polarization as a result of the primaries, and there are a lot of initiatives to change primary systems to reduce that polarization and to bring candidates who have appeal to a wider swath of the electorate forward. And I would also note, Representative Murwicki, that I'm pretty proud to be a Vermonter, and the bipartisan cooperation that has typically been felt despite our pretty left leanings here. So.
In my town, I get called a conservative sometimes.
I've been called a progressive. Yeah. And I've won the Republican nomination and the Democratic nomination.
It depends, right?
Yeah.
Representative, you're talking to.
Thanks. And this might include Tim. I think you said if somebody declines the primary nomination, that opens up so the party can nominate somebody. And I thought that we heard that was the other, like if somebody wins a primary, then that's locked up whether they keep it or not.
The primary can nominate someone, the party can nominate someone else.
Yeah, so I want to jump in, excuse me, and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, but if the candidate wins the primary and then declines the nomination, that's different. The sore loser law provisions that we.
Right, I'm not talking about the bill, I'm talking about the current status.
Today, if a candidate declines a nomination, Representative Sebelius is correct, the party can choose a candidate to fill that vacancy.
Yes. You could not choose an independent, however, nor could an independent choose to come in after the primaries. Hence my second instance of amendment.
But the independent could choose to identify with the party affiliation if given the nomination.
Say it again.
If somebody was identifying as an independent and somebody declined a major party.
If you've run on two tickets, so if you've run as an independent, if you've taken out candidacy filings to run as an independent and,
So
for instance,
that-
as a Democrat, which our senator does.
Yep, okay.
And so that happens, I think, and has happened with one of our US senators. And so the party could choose to nominate someone else to run as senator if they wanted to, under their banner.
Conversely, the independent who files as an independent is going to have their name printed on the ballot and doesn't go through the gate in order to earn the privilege of being the major party's nominee. So they really are, as Representative Murphy said, distinct paths, except for this point of filling vacancies potentially.
Unless they haven't filed until after the primary,
Well,
in which case they wouldn't be filed as an independent yet, so they could be nominated by a party.
An independent cannot file to run after the primary. Currently.
Yes.
Yes, my proposal would change that and would make it possible.
Just ask one clarifying question. So your proposal would in essence create a path where somebody could file and lose in a major party primary and still have a window of opportunity to wind up on the general election ballot as an independent.
Yes, because the parties don't control access to the general election ballot.
I was just asking. I guess one more quick thing then. This Gallup poll I'm looking at is national.
It is.
Do we have Vermont specific data?
I'm happy to provide that for you.
I was wondering, Representative Sebelia, if you think that our open primaries where voters don't have to register, they can choose which primary they want to vote in each year, if that helps to reduce some of the polarization you talked about that leads to party activists choosing the most extreme candidate in the party. If you think that maintaining that open system the way we are in this regime helps to diminish that impact some.
I think that the system that we currently have now is better than the closed primaries and does not shut out independents, which happens in a number of states. However, a better proposal would be something like a top four primary in which all of the candidates run. The Democrats and the Republicans and the progressives put their best candidates in and the top four win, and maybe it's 4 Democrats. Maybe it's no Democrats, but who has the most support? And then we go to the general election.
Any further questions for Representative Sebelia? Thanks for bringing your. Stick around while we do our work in the next few minutes here. So, committee, done a lot of work on this bill. Appreciate everybody spending a little bit more time here before we head out on the floor.
I have one fundamental question. Or actually, if I might.
Yeah, sure. Sorry,
Laura,
Representative Sibilia, I should say.
yes, Representative Sibilia, why are you an independent?
Why am I an independent? It's a good question. Well, I can tell you when I realized that I was an independent, and that is when I had, I guess, 15 years ago, moderate Republicans, which I don't know that flavor still exists. Oh, actually, though, one of them still is serving in this body, come to find me. Excuse me, with no offense to my Republican colleagues, not quite that flavor. A number of those folks have since become independents. But one of them still serves in this body, came to find me and suggested I should run for office. And I said, with no offense to my colleagues in the room, that the national party was too ideological for me for one of the parties, too extreme. And the state party was too extreme in the other party. And so that I would feel that it was best to serve my voters as an independent. And I've never regretted that choice. I don't think that everyone should be independents. I think there is good use to having parties, but I also think that there is good use to having some independence. I think it helps us all work together better. So.
Thank you.
I would like to consider these amendments in the order they were presented, if that's okay with the committee. Representative Murley.
Sure, I'd like to move that we find your amendment favorable.
There were two, right? Two separate ones.
No, so there are, so to be clear, the McCarthy et al. Amendment has two instances of amendment, but it is one amendment. It is one package for the purposes of our voting, unless we decide to divide it and create a committee amendment and do all that. But I am presenting it as a package. It is one thing that has two separate policy changes to our bill in it. So Representative Rowicki moved. Is there any further discussion on the McCarthy et al. Amendment? That's draft 1.7.
For the record.
For the record, yes.
I want to ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Representative Byron,
Yes.
Representative Boyden, yes. Representative Hango,
Yes.
Representative Morgan,
Yes.
Representative Cooper of Burlington, Representative Baroque,
Yes.
Representative Chase,
Yes.
Representative Waters Evans,
Yes.
Representative Cooper of Randolph,
Yes.
Representative Nugent,
Yes.
Representative Higley,
Yes.
Representative McCarthy.
Yes.
11-0-1.
Mr. Chair, does anyone know if Representative Burlington Hooper is going to come in at all?
He was here earlier.
Oh, okay.
On Zoom, but.
Well, I mean,
He was on Zoom, but my understanding is that he's not able.
Oh, physically, yeah.
Thanks for asking. But yeah, he ran into some trouble getting here this morning.
Not related, okay?
And if you'd like a
Motion,
motion
please.
on Representative Sebelia's amendment, I would find it favorable.
So Representative Higley has moved to find this Representative Sebelia's amendment favorable.
Even though I'd like to consider myself a moderate Republican.
Me too.
You're from
For Republicans, as it were.
So I want to say before we do the vote that Representative Sibilia has done a lot of thoughtful work on this, thinking about this bill, and challenged me to think a lot about the impact that some of our initial proposals would have on independent candidates. I think it was very useful to have the voice of an independent former representative come, changed my thinking around the filing deadline synchronization, and we removed that part of the bill. The proposals that Representative Sibilia make go in a 180-degree different direction than what I was hoping to do with this bill. So I'll be voting no. But I deeply respect the desire to give voters choices. We're going to be working on more policy in this biennium that seeks to, I think, do some of the things that Representative Sibilia talked about. But in this particular bill, and you'll hear me say it on the floor when I present H 429, I want to make sure that the party nominations mean something, and that the people who run to be the standard bearer for one of our major parties, that, you know, that's the lane that they're driving at. And so sections 1 and 2, the so-called sore loser law, that's a term of art that's used in the poli-sci business for this. I think it's an important step toward making that party nomination mean something. So I want to support the underlying bill, and I'll be voting no on the amendment. Is there any other discussion? All right, I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Representative Byron.
No.
Representative Boyden, no. Representative Hingo.
Yes.
Representative Morgan.
Yes.
Representative Hooper of Burlington. Representative Murphy.
No.
Representative Chase.
No.
Representative Waters Evans.
No.
Representative Hooper of Randolph.
No.
Representative Nugent.
No.
Representative Higley.
Yes.
Representative McCarthy.
No.
3, 8, 1.
Thank you, everyone, for your work. We will be on the floor at 1. We'll go offline.